Hey guys, how's it going? So I've been putting out some videos recently about photo editing. I wanted to kind of show something to you guys, if that's okay, with your permission, obviously. So a bit of backstory, I made a video showing some before and after edits of photos I've done in the past. Pretty good video, go check that out, done pretty well. I've also done a video editing my friends' photos, and when I was editing my friends' photos, I was like, you know, I could probably make these even crispier with this what neat trick. But then I was kind of just like, you know, why don't I make an entirely new video making some fresh points and kind of adding in stuff I wish I said in that video and really cranking up the value for you guys. So long story short, today's video is about fixing this absolutely abysmal photo. It's a very average photo of myself. I've done way better work. I literally just took it today in like 2 minutes so I could make this video because I wanted to show you guys some things. So the composition is fine. The lighting is really not ideal, which is what I wanted because I wanted to show you what kind of tricks you can do to make things better. So what I've got is I'm being heavily backlit by the sun. I didn't put any house lights on because that would have been too much of a nightmare to correct with, you know, the different color temperatures going on. But I want to show you what I did do to this to make it look like this, which I think looks pretty decent. It's not my best work, and obviously it's not the best starting point as a photo goes. So you know, you can't do something insanely amazing if you're starting off with something crap. You can't polish a turd, but we can definitely try. So this is what we started off with. It's dark, I'm in shadow, heavily backlit, not the best. So what I did was I brought up the exposure of everything. I brought up the exposure a lot, took down the highlights because if the highlights were there, actually that's pretty all right. But, you know, I wanted to bring back some of that details because of things I'm going to do later. So this is just kind of to average out the exposure across the board. So I brought the shadows up, which is mostly me. Took the whites down because they were all clipping. I could make this lighter by not bringing them down too much, which I might do. Because sometimes when you edit a photo, you go back to it a few hours later and you're like, oh, you know what? I should have done that differently. And it looks way better. I brought the blacks down because when you bring the shadows up, it brings the blacks up as well. So you gotta bring the blacks back down to compensate. And then I made a simple tone curve. That's before the curve and that's after the curve. Really kind of just mats it out, makes it look more like a photo. So that's, to be fair, that's an alright starting point. But let's continue. So this is what I went for with the color. Obviously we've got the same light settings, same curve, but we've got some color adjustments. I really like to focus on color in photos and videos because I think it's so important. And I know a little bit about color theory, you know, like color harmonies and doing triads and all that. I think that's the word. So at the minute I kind of like going for this browny, yellowy, kind of teal look. If you don't like it, that's just personal preference. So what I did was I brought up the color temperature a little bit because it was a bit cold. Yeah, I put up the tint a tiny bit to give it a little bit more magenta because it was a tiny bit green. And then I did some adjustments on the yellow, on the green to make it more yellow. I brought down the blues, I changed some blues, dropped the pinks and the purples as well. So this is what it was and this is what it is now. And there's little bits like here and next to me with the bush. And to be fair, it looks quite nice like this, but I just really prefer, you know, that kind of, that style with that blue. Some people might prefer it before, but I prefer it with. So from that point, we go on to the effects. So obviously we've got the same color settings going on. And then in the effects, what I've done is added some texture, clarity, tiny bit of dehaze, a big boy vignette and some grain. So we're bringing up the shadows a lot already. So I put a tiny bit of denoising on and then I added grain on top of that because when you denoise, it makes everything look plastic. So I added some grain in to make it more textured. Hefty boy vignette because without it, it's like that, which is very bright. We bring that back down to bring the focus back onto me because I'm a massive narcissist and I need all the focus on me. That's without any of the effects and that's with the effects. Kind of just creates local contrast adjustments to kind of, you know, bring out some smaller details. And then we're pretty much there. The only thing that I did on top of that was I added this preset because I kind of like this one. I usually go for a different one, but this one looked cool, which makes it go like that. Kind of more contrasty, brings out some more details. But wait a minute, there's something super cool that I've done as well. So this is our final image. What else have you done to make this amazing, Nathan? Well, I'm glad you asked. There's these little things called masks, and they let you do localized adjustments to pretty much anything. You can see the list here. So you got like your light levels, your contrast effects, colors, and just everything. So what I've done is, you can see here, I've got 3 masks on my face, one on my eyeballs to bring out the light in my eyes a bit more, one on just my general facial area, which is bringing up the brightness on my face. And then you've got this on my beard, which is just kind of toning down the oranges in my beard, because without it, my beard just looked a touch too orange, and I was like, not a fan of that, because I have a ginger beard. This is without these masks, and look at that. My face is really muddy and kind of gross. So I put them on to contrast that, basically, which makes a huge difference. Sometimes people forget to do local adjustments because they're like, I can't really be bothered. But I think that difference is just insane. And then I also had this radial gradient on, which is a circular mask around me, which I did a lot on. Bumped up the contrast, brought down the highlights, bumped up the clarity, and this was nuts. Sometimes I always forget to do this as well. I'm like, you know what, why do I need clarity in my backgrounds? That kind of just makes it look a bit muddy. But that difference is just huge. Like, granted, that looks pretty cool, kind of like washed out, you know, foggy look. But I think that just looks so much more better, really. It's just more pleasing on the eyes because it makes more sense for your eyes. That's kind of like one big thing, is that your eyes need to be able to figure out what's going on. And with it like that, your eyes are just kind of like, where's the details? What am I looking at here? My eyes are, at least. So with that, it's kind of like, oh, I know where this guy is. He's in a kitchen. So that's why I did that. So we've got our edit down. We've saved our image. We have gone from this horrible dark mess with basically no details going on to kapow! This nice boy who is staring you right in your soul and them dead fish eyes. So we're gonna give it a little bit more pizzazz, little bit. So there's this little thing called the law of diminishing returns. I don't know if it's a law. I don't think it's like written in the textbooks of like, this is a fact of life, but I see it all the time. Basically, the longer you spend on something, the smaller and smaller the increments of improvement that you get are, which is great, because then you get people which are absolute experts in a field because they've put a billion hours into practicing this one skill, which makes them like, I don't know, 50% better than someone that has barely touched it. But that 50% really impacts the final image quality, because it's all these tiny little things that you learn along the way. Back to the photo. Diminishing returns for time spent in doing it. I brought this photo into Photoshop and threw on an overlay. And you're like, oh, Nathan, that's real simple, throw on an overlay. And it is. But it takes more time, and Photoshop takes fucking ages to load up. So I don't often do this. And this is kind of what I wanted to show in my last video, where I was editing my friend's photos, because I was like, you know, you can add that tiny little touch more professionalism and it looks so much better. And I wanted to do that in my friend's photos, and I wanted to do a video about that, but then I was like, you know, it's going to take me too much time doing it with like 5 photos, and I don't know what kind of overlays to do. So I thought, you know what, I'll just do it with this one. And this is what we have. So what I've done is I've got this overlay, which is basically like light shafts, and I've masked it out a bit so it's a bit smoother, because I've really scaled it up so it gets a bit weird. And you throw that on with a screen, blending modifier, and then you put a curved adjustment on to kind of make it look better. And I've done a lot of blur on it because I made it massive so it gets really pixelated. So I've blurred it a little bit so that doesn't look grim like that. And then you might not really notice it unless I pointed it out, and it's this lens flare. So I've duplicated the layer, so this lower layer is just normal without the lens flare, and I've thrown that lens flare on, and it's actually quite noticeable when I do that, but that just adds a bit more dynamics to the shot. Because I figure, you know, it's a kitchen and it could be morning, so it's like, maybe it's like a dusty summery morning, and there's like, you know, light shafts and fog and stuff. And what I've done is I've tried to match the light shafts and the flare with where the sun is actually coming from in the picture, because it was around here. And then I've used these light shafts to kind of be like, oh, maybe my shoulder's like cutting off the light, and then that's why it's shafting around, that's why it's going around my shoulder. I don't know, but that's what we've got. And I just think that adds a lot more to it, especially the light shafts, because without it, it's kind of like, all right, he's just stood at a sink. Good for him. And then you put that on, it's like, oh, this could be in a catalogue, I think. Maybe I'm maybe reaching too far with this awful photo. It's not awful, it's fine. So yeah, overlays. That's the secret ingredient to making stuff not look shit. So the long and short of it is that's how I save my photos from just going to waste. Because if I took this photo and I was like, yeah, that is not as good as I was imagining it, then it's just going to go in the bin. One very simple step that I could have done to make this look better is literally just put a reflector bouncing some of that sunlight back into my face to light in my face, or just add in another light, a nice light, not a house light, and just lighten me, basically. That would have just made it a million times better to begin with. But I wanted to show how you can save photos by changing light levels, doing color work, throwing on some effects and localized adjustments. And I think I did a pretty good job. It's a little bit contrasty in the clarity. It's a bit too clarity. I'm going to turn that down, I think. It is all the way up, in fairness. But I think that looks pretty good. There's the before. There's the after. Technology is amazing. Adjust your light levels. Think about color a little bit. And do some localized adjustments. That is basically how you can save any photo. Maybe not any photo. There's probably a limit. I'm throwing overlay on. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know. Please let me know if you learned anything, or if you found it interesting or just entertaining to see how someone edits a photo. If you've got any creative challenges or anything you'd like me to try with regards to making a video or photos or anything, then just let me know. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day and goodbye.